everyone, and welcome to the latest in our webinars, How Can I Control My Anger? We are really glad you're here, whether you are joining us live or whether you are watching us back at another time on another day. Thanks for joining us and giving us this chance to listen in to this conversation. My name is Jenny Flanagan. If you've seen some webinars before, you've probably seen my face. I'm a psychotherapist and art therapist based down in Devon. And for the last few years, I've been running a project called Illumina, which works with young people struggling with self-harm. And anger is something that we often end up talking about, so it's great to be able to devote some proper time to it. And tonight I'm joined by a special guest as well, Jules Haddo. So Jules, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Jules. I live in West Somerset and work for a company called the Minehead Eye, which is a local youth service. And I go in and out of schools working with young people and talking to young people about various well-being issues, including anger.
Yeah. So we're coming to you from the West Country today. And yeah, we've asked Jules to join us today because he has a lot of experience working in schools specifically around this issue. So hopefully between us, we're going to be able to share some stuff that feels helpful to you. Yeah, we're assuming that most of you watching are probably young people who are struggling with anger yourselves, but there might be some adults as well who are watching to get some kind of insight or input on how to support someone struggling with anger. So whoever you are, we hope this is helpful. Feel free to pop questions at any point into the chat box and we'll try and answer them as we go, because we'd love this to feel like it's relevant to you and the questions that you're bringing to this tonight. And just before we kick off, who are we? So this is a Headstrong webinar. Headstrong is like the mental and emotional well-being wing of Youthscape. And so Illumina that I run and Headstrong are both projects that are part of Youthscape, which works nationally with young people and youth workers across the country. So let's crack on. Tonight we are talking about anger. Yeah, why is it important that we're talking about anger? Why do you think, Jules, that we should be talking about anger? It feels like this is something that you come across a lot in your work. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's something that affects us all from time to time. And I guess sometimes we think, is this now a problem? Is my anger getting too bad? And we might feel like we need to just ask for help sometimes when it gets too much.
Definitely. It's definitely something that can be really like invasive and intrusive and start to cause problems, not just for us, but for other people. So let's start by thinking about what is anger. Anger, it's in some ways, it's really obvious. Like we all recognize what anger looks like. We all know what it's like when someone's angry with us. We might even know what it's like to feel angry ourselves. But I guess going back to basics about what anger is like a surge of feeling that kind of just comes upon us, if you like, in response to something that we're experiencing in our life. It's a physical thing. It manifests in some really physical symptoms. So some of us feel a bit hot when we feel angry. Generally, our heartbeat increases. So we might feel our heart pounding, but it will definitely be getting faster. Muscle tension usually comes as well. Heat. There's other symptoms as well, other kind of signs that we might recognize that we'll talk a bit later. But it's something that happens to us physically and something that isn't voluntary. Like we don't choose, I'm going to get angry now. Our anger is a response to stuff that we are experiencing in the world. And anger is something that tells us that something isn't right in the world. And that might be something personal, like there's something that's just happened to me specifically, which isn't okay and making me angry. But it can also sometimes be something wider, something bigger in the world that we're seeing that feels really unfair or feels really wrong and might lead to us feeling like that's not right. And anger is something that we all feel. It's not like an optional emotion. It's not something that only some people feel. It might be something that we feel like only some people struggle with, but it's definitely something that all of us, to be human, is to experience anger. And if you're there thinking, like, I don't really think I'm an angry person, actually, like, I just don't think it's something I really feel. What that probably means is that you don't maybe express your anger externally. So you don't feel like it kind of gets out to the world. You don't feel like other people experience you as angry, or you're really good at controlling it or ignoring it. But it is something that we all feel that unites all of us as humans. It's not just a kind of special problem that some people have.
Yeah. And then we might ask this question, well, can anger ever be a good thing? Is this something bad that I need to fix, or could it be a good thing? And for me, the simple question is yes, it can be a good thing. Sometimes you see something that is bad. Sometimes you see an injustice and you go, this needs fixing. This shouldn't be happening. This shouldn't be happening to me, or it shouldn't be happening to other things or people that I see around me. And I think that's unjust, and I want to take some action to see that injustice stop. And the emotion of anger drives that, because you want to rectify what's wrong. I think when it starts to become a problem is then when we become the lawmaker. But we'll see that as it goes on. If we take justice into our own hands, that's when it can sometimes get out of hand. But when we see something that is unjust, and we, with others, maybe step in to seek justice, then that anger can be a good emotion that drives us forward.
Yeah. So when is it that it becomes a problem? Like, that's a really important question to ask. When is anger okay, and when does it become a problem? Well, I think there's probably like one really, really obvious answer to this, which is it becomes a problem when it hurts other people. And that might be like something really physical. If anger is turning physical and meaning that other people are getting, beaten up, hurt, hit in any way, of course, then anger has become a problem. But I think also it's not just a question of when it becomes physical. Anger can make us really cruel with our words. So I don't think it's only a problem if it's making you punch someone or punch a wall or something. If it's leading us to hurt people in any way, actually, it's becoming a problem. But I guess that's a lens of looking at it, going, it's a problem when it affects other people. Maybe if it doesn't affect other people, it's not a problem. I'm not sure that's true either, because actually anger really affects us. So if we are angry a lot of the time, that has a really big physical effect on us. And I know this is something that you talk about, Jules, quite a lot when in your groups that you do. But the physical things that are going on in our body when we're angry a lot, when our heart is beating hard, when we're really tense, when we're really on edge, those things like have a physical effect actually on our health and on our well-being. And so, I think it's a really important question to go, when is anger a problem for myself? When is it actually like affecting me and my well-being? And I guess it feels to me like, I guess the heart of the question is like, when does anger become a problem? It's something to do with control, I think. It's to do with like, can we control our anger? Or is our anger controlling us? Does it feel like something that we absolutely don't have control of it? And if you can't control it, then it's a problem, I think.
Yeah.
And I guess if you're thinking, but I just can't, like, it's just impossible, I'm just that person who can't, like, we really can learn it. You might not have had a lot of help learning how to, and you might feel a bit of a loss as to know how to do that, but it really is possible to change our relationship with anger, to learn to understand it more, which is like the crucial step really in getting to the point where we can control it. Because the consequences of our anger, like running out of control, to our health, to other people's well-being, but also to circumstances around us, kind of anger that's out of control can lead to all kinds of punishments and consequences. It can lead to us getting in trouble with the police, losing jobs, all kinds of like massive consequences for our lives that we don't want. And they all come down to this question of, can I control my anger? And so I guess that's one of the things we really want to talk about tonight. How can we learn to control our anger?
Yeah. And I mean, thankfully, I find anger such a practical subject, or anger management such a practical subject to talk about, because there's some real, I feel like, easy wins, practical steps, nuts and bolts you can try. And we'll get to that soon. But thankfully, equally, our body gives us warning signs. And ultimately, we need to learn to read our own body, and that might be the learning part for you. That first stage of controlling your anger, if you feel it's getting out of hand, is reading your body's warning signs. Anger can be a little bit like I always describe it as a little kind of white noise in the background. It's kind of bubbling along and you might not know it's there, but things are affecting you. And it might be, I don't know, if you stop and listen where you are right now. I mean, I can hear the grandfather clock ticking in the background. I don't know whether you can hear that. But that's a typical white noise. It's in the room, it's ticking constantly. I can hear it. I wasn't aware of it really until I stopped to listen for what's the noise in my life. Right now, it's a grandfather clock ticking. But look, that can be the same with kind of anger. There's this kind of background bubble, and that anger might be for you because there's a lot of noise in your life. There's a lot of things going on, might be right below the surface and really ready to pop out above the surface. And that might come out sooner than people you know. That might come out sooner than you expect sometimes. But it's then reading those warning signs, and you've got loads on the screen here of stuff that happens to you, to individuals, that happens just before stuff goes really wrong. And it's reading some of these warning signs and going, actually, I'm starting to feel sick. You know, I can feel aggression. I feel really emotional. I feel like crying. I'm clenching my fists here. This situation is getting out of hand and my body's tensing up. I'm feeling like I want to pace around the room, or I know my face is going red, or all these warning signs. Some people have 3 or 4 of those. Some people have all of them. I don't know how many's on the screen there, maybe about 20 or something. But, you know, if you can go through that list and go, yeah, I recognize that. Yeah, I recognize that one. Oh, yeah, no, that happens to me. No, I definitely raise my voice. Actually, my mind goes blank. And I know when my mind goes blank, probably one of the next things that's going to happen is I'm probably going to hurt something or someone, and stuff might get out of control. So it's looking for those warning signs and going, can I be more aware of them? What's happening to my body? Am I about to really lose it and start regretting it later on? And can I start listening to those warning signs? But we'll say more of that as we go on, kind of looking out for those warning signs, and then what can I do to remove myself from a situation? So yeah.
So we're going to think about like what actually happens now when you get angry, because there are patterns that that affect all of us actually that we can probably recognize. And so you can see this cycle up here, which starts with a trigger event and goes around to different things. So let's start by thinking about the trigger. Now, if you've been around here for long, you've probably heard me talk about triggers, because we talk about them in terms of lots of things to do with trauma or self-harm or addiction or all kinds of things. And triggers are a word that we use all the time. But the way that I like to think about it is that a trigger is like a connection. A trigger is something that happens. Might be something someone says, might be something someone does. It might be a memory that like suddenly comes into your head, seemingly for no reason, or a sudden thought. But something happens, either externally or internally, which connects with something painful inside you. So anything can really be a trigger. If you have like a difficult memory or a difficult connection to like a chocolate chip cookie can be a trigger for you. If you know there's something about a memory that you have or something that it means to you which is painful. So something kind of triggers us, something connects with us, and it's kind of like bigger than the actual thing. Like it connects with something which gets a reaction to us, and it triggers this anger. And then if we follow what's going on in the cycle, so there's something that happens internally or externally, and immediately we start to interpret that, and we'll have thoughts about it. We'll probably have like a negative interpretation of it, of like, that was meant, you know, that was an insult to me, or that was because that person hates me, or that person is trying to make me angry, or it can be anything, but we'll interpret it, whatever the trigger is. And the interpretation will then lead us to have an emotional response. Now, we've set those out as 3 different things. What it probably feels like is something happens, and then just like you kind of get this emotional explosion. But if we were to really, really, really slow it down, there would be these stages of something's happened, you've interpreted what it must mean, and that has made you have an emotional response, probably, you know, in this case, anger. And then as soon as that is registered in your body, that will start to show up in those physical warning signs that we just talked about. You know, it might be a red face, it might be like a pounding heart, it might be crying, it might be aggression, or, you know, all kinds of things will physically happen because anger is a physical thing. And then that will lead to us behaving in certain ways. If we've got that kind of energy and that emotion driving us around, that will lead us into a certain kind of behavior. And like I say, when we experience it, it probably just feels like massively quick. Something happens and we just react. But when we can stop and take a breath, it actually can help us to make sense of this. And this might not be something that you can do like in the moment when you feel really angry, but it might be possible after you've been really angry, after you've had an explosion, when you're in a calmer place, to sit back and go, okay, what was the thing that triggered me? How did I explain that? Like, what kind of negative thoughts did that set off? And how did that make me feel? And then what happened in my body? And then how did I act as a result? And just having some awareness of that, like slowing the whole thing down, can become really helpful for helping us to make sense of it. Sometimes when we talk about feeling triggered, it's almost like we're kind of blaming the trigger. Like, it wasn't my fault, you know, that I got angry, that thing happened and it made me angry. And telling the story in that way, which we all do at different times, you made me really angry, you made me really upset. It makes it sound like it's like totally not our fault in any way, like it's just on whoever said the thing or what the situation was. And that's probably not like completely honest of us to just make out that it's not our responsibility at all. I read something recently which I think put it really helpfully, which said, you know, when it comes to anger, there are three things at work. There's the trigger event or the provocation, like something will happen. It might be said, it might be done, but there is something that will provoke anger. But then there's how we react to it. How we choose to interpret it, how we choose to make sense of it, like our actually reaction and interpretation of that, then that's up to us actually. Nobody makes us interpret something in a certain way. Like we have some kind of control about that. And then the third element, which we often don't think about, is like the mood that we're already in. Like if I'm already in a really bad and a grumpy mood and someone says something mean, I'm much more likely to get really angry and react. Whereas if I'm feeling in kind of quite a calm, chill place, the same thing might happen. The same person might say the same thing, and I might just kind of interpret it in a different way or just feel much more able to manage myself. So part of the story of like what makes us so angry is actually often nothing to do with the thing that's happened, but maybe about what happened earlier in the day or just the mood that we're in. And that's something, again, that we can often have a little bit more control over or a bit more influence over in terms of how we spend our time, whether we get enough sleep, those kinds of things. And we're going to touch on them a little bit more in a minute.
Yeah. So yeah, this cycle of anger, I think for me, ultimately, what I'd like to help you get to the stage where we can stop this cycle just before the behavior kicks in. If nothing else, we can leave the cycle or circle, whichever way you want to see it, whenever we want. But I think we need to stop it before we get to the behavior when we hurt something or someone. Because ultimately, I don't think any of us really want to hurt something or someone. And that's, I think, when anger gets out of control. But in this cycle, there's these other four things that happen beforehand. And hopefully, the better we get at reading ourselves, at getting to know ourselves, the better we can get in leaving that cycle, because we don't want to get to that behavior change. We don't want to get to the point where we're punching walls, punching people, punching things. But there's things that happen, you know, if we don't find an exit, there's things that we're damaging, and we've already touched on some of them. But, you know, just listed here, your heart and your mind. Again, going back to those 20 little warning signs that we said, most of those play out in your heart and in your mind. You know, if you're clenching your fists and your blood pressure's going up, that's not doing your heart any good. That's putting excessive pressure on your blood flow. if you're mulling stuff over and your mind's going blank, or worse still, you're so angry that you've got a pumping headache, you know, it doesn't take rocket science to understand that's hurting your mind. And we need to look after our hearts. We need to look after our minds. And why, when we're angry about something else, should we end up damaging ourselves and making it worse for ourselves? So we need to look after our heart. We need to look after our minds. We've only got one of each. We need to look after our bodies, because you know what it's like when you really lose it and you start punching a wall. I don't know whether you've ever got to that stage before, or breaking a door. You know, ultimately it hurts. We damage our bodies. We hurt our fists. We hurt our legs. Or worse still, you know, we end up punching someone else and we really hurt them as well as ourselves. And we've got to look after our bodies. It's not okay to be damaging our body. But other things we damage in the process, friends, family. I don't know whether, you know, you probably have already noticed, if you're labeled the angry person, or, you know, that's what your parents think or live with, that you're always angry, they treat you differently. They walk around on eggshells. They don't trust you as much. They cut some of your freedom. They kind of maybe take away, I don't know, computer games or something like that, or, you know, or your friends actually, you know, walk on eggshells around you. They don't really, they kind of think, oh, are they having a bad day? Are they about to explode? Are they going to punch someone today? Am I going to have to be part of that? Maybe your teachers treat you differently because actually, you know, you blow up that often in class that actually it affects how your teachers react to you. So it affects people around us if we're constantly angry. And that's not nice to live with, is it? When you kind of constantly living in that awareness that we're affecting other people, our behaviors getting other people down, and it's affecting how we're treated by others. But equally, you've got these big consequences, and Jenny touched on it. But the big consequences ultimately is if it doesn't stop and you carry on hurting things or someone or something, there's going to be some more serious consequences as time goes on. If it gets out of control, then there's going to be legal consequences, because, you know, we can't go damaging other people's property. Eventually, the police might get involved. We can't go beating up other people. Eventually, the police will get involved. It has dire consequences on our future. It could give you a criminal record. And then, you know, all these things that happen in anger, we realize, hey, we've damaged our own heart here. We've damaged our own mind here. We've damaged our own body. We've damaged the friends around us. We've damaged our family. And now we've damaged our future, and the legal implications with what job you may or may not get in the future are it's not worth risking. So I think taking anger seriously and going, this needs to be, I need to find a way to control my anger, is so important, because those things listed on the screen in front of you are so important. They're worth protecting and worth taking control of the anger in your life. And believe me, you can. And we're getting to that bit.
Yeah, Emma's asked a really great question here. I just want to stop for a second. She says, so many young people don't see the root of the issue as anger. How can you lead the young person to a place where they see it as anger? And that's a really, I mean, yeah, that's a really insightful question. As a therapist, I'm working with young people, and I guess I'm curious as to what, like, the young people watching think about this. I find a lot of young people that I work with find it really hard to own up to the idea of that they're being angry. Like, no, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. They might be like, I'm a bit frustrated, but, you know, that's as far as they'll go, because I don't know, we often see anger as like a real problem. And I think there's probably a really big gender difference here as well. And that's probably worth labeling, in that traditionally it's been way more acceptable for boys to be angry. That's been seen as a kind of natural expression of male aggression and like masculinity. Like, it's fine for men to be angry. We've been way more accepting as a culture of male anger than of female anger. And it's you know, historically been seen as kind of inappropriate for women, who should be, you know, gentle and submissive and even. And so I think because of that, I think boys are much more likely to show their anger, and even to express other feelings, maybe like sadness or anxiety, that are much harder to own up to, perhaps as a boy. They will kind of mask other feelings and express them as anger. Whereas for girls, they will often, struggle to recognize their own anger or to own it, and it will come out in other ways, like anxiety or sadness, or in other ways. So yeah, it's a really big challenge, and it's a really insightful question. In terms of how to lead the person to the place where they might be able to make some more sense of it, I think that happens through a trusting relationship. I think that happens absolutely not in the heat of the moment. It happens afterwards when, in a space, I guess, a therapy space or a counseling space, or, if you're a youth worker working with a young person, or, in a kind of school situation. Those are the kinds of conversations that over time that you can have. But yeah, it can definitely be a challenge. But I guess to kind of normalize and make okay and anger, even saying things like, wow, I can imagine, like, that would make me really angry, that situation, or something that kind of gives a permission, maybe. I don't know, Jules, I'm curious as to what you'd say about that, because I know you obviously often work with people for whom like anger is obviously the issue. They're not in denial about it, but I wonder how much you come across this sense where young people don't see the root of the issue as anger.
I feel like I haven't come across it that much. I find they're so, I don't know, they're very good at expressing.
By the time they get to you, they've owned their anger. They've recognised that that's the issue.
Yeah. I mean, even kids that I work with that don't necessarily come on an anger course, but are working through other issues. Seems like it comes to the surface quite readily that actually, I explode, or I the other day I walked out of class, or I ended up hitting someone and I've lost a friend through it. And yeah, so we seem to easily get onto the subject.
Well, I wonder, if anyone else has got any insight on the gender difference and how that's manifest, or if there's any girls out there struggling with the anger who want to join in the debate, feel free. But let's think a little bit about now what we can do to control our anger. What are the practical things? Well, here's some top tips. Here's some really practical things. Read your body. Like Jules was saying, like that, the more that we can recognize what is actually happening in our bodies. And some people find this easier than others. Actually, young people who are neurodiverse often find it easier to notice what's happening in their bodies rather than maybe a neurotypical young person. But being able to notice, like, what does anger feel like for me? What are the signs? How do I know it's coming? Being able to tune into that, so that you then kind of have a heads up. It's like you're not kind of it doesn't just kind of come from somewhere and like blindside you, but you're aware that it's building, and then you can start to maybe the next thing walk away. So disengaging from the situation where that's possible is probably the most helpful thing to do to manage it and to mean that things don't escalate. And we've put here, like, walk away, get outside. Like, if walking away can also involve being outside, there's so much evidence that, like, being in the fresh air and being in the outside world actually has a really positive effect on us psychologically and mentally. Like, that can be really helpful. Breathe. I feel like this is one that we always say, and I feel like I can just like almost hear the eye rolls from young people, because they're like, I'm just always told to breathe, like no matter what's going on, I'm told to breathe. And part of the problem is that when we stop and go, okay, fine, I'll take a deep breath. But actually, when we say breathe, we mean like spend a good few minutes breathing slowly and more deeply, like not like 3 breaths and then you'll be fine. This is something that you're doing to actually slow down your heart rate, to regulate your body, to send signals to your body that you don't need to be in kind of survival panic mode, that you can actually start to feel calmer and more rested. And if that That's something like if you're stuck in a classroom and you can't walk out of a classroom, then that's something that you can maybe do at your desk. And different people use different ones. I know some people like kind of draw around their finger, and it's like you breathe in as you go up and then breathe down and breathe up, in and out, and in and out. And there's different shapes you can use. But what you're doing there, the reason that you're doing that is actually by slowing and deepening your breathing, you're actually bringing about some changes in your body, which are going to mean that you emotionally feel different. So that's a way to start to get yourself back into a kind of calm and okay place. Get moving. I mean, this is also kind of, there's loads of research that says when we have anger in our bodies, like that is an energy to it. Like, and we need to do something with that energy. Like if we just sit there and hold it in, we're probably going to explode ultimately. We actually have to channel that energy somewhere. And, you know, that's not always something that can happen immediately. You might need to like disengage and go somewhere else to be able to do it. But, you know, doing exercise, going running, going and playing football, going, you know, outside and getting moving, that's something that can actually get that energy moving through our bodies. So it's not sitting there like a kind of time bomb ticking, ready to explode. Grounding, and it's another thing that we use, I guess, not just for anger, but for different extremes of emotion. And it's a way of basically taking us from the place that our imagination is taking. So often when we're triggered, our head is just kind of spinning out into all kinds of thoughts and feelings that are kind of taking us on this emotional roller coaster. And what we need to do is just to kind of come back into our bodies and into the room. So doing things even like wiggling your toes, things like naming 5 things in the room, 5 colors in the room that you can see right now, or like naming 5 things that you could reach out and touch. These are things that just kind of bring us back into like the here and now, and take us kind of down from those kind of big emotional highs that we're in. Using your language as well is a really like you I mean, it's something we say to toddlers, isn't it? Use your words when they're just going ah. But actually, like, language is an amazing thing that that can be really helpful when we're angry. You know, probably like the healthiest expression of anger is when we can use our words to explain what we're thinking and how we're feeling without it coming out almost as like a kind of a weapon, or an insult, or a kind of something really aggressive towards another person. And there's amazing research that says actually if we can, when we're struggling with any emotion, if we can actually name what that emotion is, which sounds like a crazy thing, like why would that possibly help, but just to be able to say I'm angry right now, that actually does something really strange in our brain, which is that because we use a different part of our brain to use words and to describe things than the part of the brain where we feel that kind of primal emotion, that like surge of anger, because it almost kind of takes the energy to a different part of our brain and takes some of the energy away from that emotion. So actually, the more that we're able to even just say, I am angry because of this, or I'm angry and I need to leave the room, even just being able to say that is going to be a helpful thing that like brings us back almost from the brink, from the edge of some of those really big, really difficult emotions. I'd also say, I guess the other thing I'd throw in there is like a safe person. Sometimes if we really struggle to calm ourselves down when we're angry, if that's something that we genuinely don't feel like we know how to do, doesn't make sense to us how we do that, if that's not something that we almost have been taught how to do, or have seen other people doing around us, then anger can feel really terrifying and overwhelming if we can feel really out of control. And in that situation, we actually need somebody else to be able to calm us down. You know, when we're younger, we genuinely don't have the ability to like calm ourselves down when we're really angry or when we're really upset. And we need an adult there to help calm us down. And as we get older, the more people that we've had helping us calm down, the more able we become to do that for ourselves. But if we haven't really had the experience of someone really helping us recognize that we're angry and helping us calm down, or helping us when we're really upset, then we haven't grown the level of those skills yet. And we can develop there at any time, so that, you know, they're still within your power to learn. It's not too late. But if we haven't really had that and we cannot bring ourselves down, then we need to know there is a safe person that we can go to who understands and who knows how to calm us down. And going to that person is actually in the long run going to help us to learn how to do that for ourselves. But if that's not something that you feel like you have the ability to do yourselves, then you need to know who can. And that's a really crucial thing. Like, all humans need those kinds of people around at different stages. So know who your safe person is, and make sure other people, maybe in school or college or whatever, like know who that person is, so that they can help you then get into a calm place. And then afterwards, you can kind of think back and talk about, like, what happened, what could you have done differently, that kind of thing. But maybe in the heat of the moment, when you get to a certain pitch, you actually are going to need the other person initially to help calm you down.
So I think, yeah, if you take the last example of when you were angry, maybe, I don't know whether you lost your rag in class today, or I don't know, your parents called you down for dinner for the umpteenth time and you didn't want to finish that computer game. Think back to that last example of when you were angry, and then think about putting some practical things in place that Jenny's just talked about. Like, okay, next time that happens, could I walk away? Could I walk into the back garden? Could I walk out into the playground? Could I go get some fresh air, breathe, real deep breaths, calming down, getting some oxygen flowing around your body so your brain starts thinking straight again? Could you do that kind of, those 5 senses, just grounding yourself, just to get you thinking in the right direction again? But then let's just say that happened. Try it next time, but let's just say this worked well, and you've walked away for the first time successfully. You've got outside, you've got moving, you've walked around the garden, you're breathing, you're calming your head down. This is probably the brave part. Do I need to go fix something? This kind of, you need to put your brave pants on and just go, okay, who did I just walk away from? Now I'm thinking straight. Do I need to go and fix that problem? Do I need to go and fix that relationship? Do I need to go back to the teacher and go, okay, sorry, I lost it there for a moment. I've calmed down. I've thought about it. Can we talk about it after class? Or that kind of brave moment, back to mum and dad and go, okay, yeah, I hear you. You were just calling me for dinner for the 6th time today, and I wasn't listening, and I was stuck in my computer game. And do we need to go and fix a relationship? And that can take guts. But it's worth fixing the relationship. It's worth saying sorry and giving the other person space, because sometimes they might need to say sorry. Maybe they pushed your buttons a bit hard and actually they need to say sorry. So just once you've calmed down, see if you can go back and fix the relationship. Some relationships might not be fixable. Some relationships, I realize, some of the issues and some of the battles that you guys face are so big that they can't be fixed that easily. But if it's a good relationship, a friend that actually you've lost your rag with and you never really meant to, you were having a bad day, you know you were having a bad day, could you go back and fix that relationship? Could you just go, guys, sorry, let's start over. Like, I misunderstood you there. Or did you realize actually what you said was this and that really upset me? So it's always worth thinking, if you've walked away, do you need to walk back and maybe fix a relationship?
Yeah. And then I guess, what else can we do? Like, we're not in the moment right now. We're really angry. There's not a specific situation. Like, what else? Are there other things that we can be doing in our life that are going to help us be less angry? And I guess this is flipping back right to that conversation we had about, I don't know, 20 minutes ago, when I was saying about the 3 things that kind of affect like how angry we get. Are the thing that provokes us or triggers us, how we interpret that and how we react to it, but also the mood that we are in that place. Now, we can't be people who are always in a great mood. Like, that's just not a kind of human possibility. But there are things that impact how good we feel, how grumpy we feel. how resilient, if you like, we feel. And I guess these are all things that can have a really big effect on our mood, that can mean that we are much less likely to fly off the handle, to let our anger get out of control when inevitable things happen that will make us angry. Because there are always going to be things and relationships and people, because we can't control other people, who are going to, provoke us and trigger our anger. So what can we do to help ourselves? Well, I guess I'm going to go backwards through this list, like sleep. Sleep's a really big one. If we aren't getting enough sleep, we are much more likely to have a really short fuse, to be really grumpy, to be really struggling. Like whatever the challenges that life throws at us, they're going to feel harder if we're not getting enough sleep. So think about like how much sleep do you get at night? Are you someone, and I do a bit of this, where you stay up way later than you mean to because you just like watching one video or after another, or you just get kind of locked in a game? Like, what is a good time to go to bed, and how can you get yourself to do that? And if you're looking for advice about what supports good sleep and how to do that, we've got loads of stuff on the Headstrong social media, so check out some of those videos. Exercise is another one, which we just know there's so much evidence that when we're doing exercise regularly, we just feel better about ourselves and we just feel better about life. It's hard to explain exactly, but the science is there. It's true. So do you do any exercise? Do you play any team sport? Do you play football with your mates? Do you go running? Do you go to the gym? Do you do anything? Whatever it is you enjoy. Is it yoga? Is it swimming? Is it dancing? Make sure that that is a part of your week, because it has a massive effect on how we feel about the rest of life. Talking, like we said before, the more able we are to put into words what we're feeling and what is hard, and have somebody else understand that, even if they can't fix a situation or change a situation, even just being understood and heard by someone, and having someone say, yeah, that sounds really hard, can just make a massive difference. And it's always hard to talk about painful things and difficult things. Like, none of us is born knowing how to do that. But the more that we try, the more that we practice, the more that maybe someone like a safe person helps us to do that, the better we get at it. And the more it helps us then to not get stuck in these big feelings that just feel like they overwhelm us and take over, the less out of control we feel. And then happy place. This is a really nice one. Like, what is your happy place? Where do you like to go? Where do you feel good? Where do you feel happy? Like, is it outdoors? Is it by the beach? Is it in the woods? Is it in your room? Is it like at the bottom of the garden? Where is it? Like, that's a really important thing to know, and to know that you have that place where you can go and where you can kind of recover, and that feels like a good place for you. Like, we all need those places.
And one of the last things we just want to look at is boundaries, which might even help you avoid the conflict in the first place. And we've all got these boundaries. And usually when someone crosses one of these 5 boundaries is when we start to get a bit angry. Like physical, if someone crosses a physical line with us, that's our personal space, touch, feeling, anything going on with your body, even with food, with you've got to eat up now. Well, I don't want to eat up now, but you've got to eat. If we cross that physical boundary, if someone starts pushing through that physical boundary, or maybe, I don't know, I've got a friend who I know I should never, coming up next to her, touch her on the shoulder and go, hi, how you doing? For her, that's her physical boundary. Shoulder touch is not okay. And that might be not okay for you. So if we learn to express these boundaries to the people that we know well, maybe we can avoid a lot of conflict in the first place. Emotions, maybe we need to be strong sometimes and go, I'm actually not okay today. Could we leave this subject? I'm not doing well. Just give me some space. Actually, right now, I can't deal with your emotions on top of my own emotions. Like, just give me some space. We'll chat about it tomorrow. Maybe there's a boundary there that you sometimes have to draw. Or a material boundary. If someone crosses a material boundary, that's all the stuff you own. Just look at, I don't know, the stuff in your bedroom. Like, actually, I hate it when my friend borrows that pair of shoes, like, because they never bring them back. And when they do bring them back, they're covered in mud. And I just can't stand that. So it's like, have you got a material boundary? intellectual boundary, like your thoughts, your ideas, what you believe, what you think is really important in life. That's your intellectual boundaries. Or time boundaries. If you've got a friend that just always is late, and you're waiting and 5 o'clock comes and 5 o'clock goes and they're still not there, and you just get irrationally angry with them because like you offered to give them a lift and yet again they're late, and it's just so annoying. So that they're all boundaries, and we all have those boundaries, and when people cross those boundaries, we get angry. So it might be good if you recognize one of those boundaries and go, yeah, do you know what, I recognize that's something that always gets to me. Maybe try, before it ever becomes an issue with your friends, explaining it to them, going, do you know, like, every time you're late, that really annoys me, that really gets me angry. So maybe just look at some of those boundaries and see if you can get clearer with your friends or with your family, where you just go, actually, could you knock on my bedroom door before you come in? Could you, or whatever it is for you that might help avoid getting so angry in the first place.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's,
just some tips
really,
there.
I think it's really key as well, because our boundaries change as we get older. Like, I think lots of kids' boundaries don't get respected in the way that an adults do. And so your teenage years are a massive time when boundaries are becoming really, really important in a way maybe that they weren't so much before. Yeah, and they're certainly getting renegotiated. And I guess if you're working with young people, it's I would say this boundary conversation is massive, because it really validates, like, it's okay that you get angry if your boundaries have been violated, but let's talk about that, let's understand it, and then let's work out how you can communicate it so they don't continue to get like railroaded. Yeah, so we're going to have to finish for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a bunch of other live streams you can also watch. We've got some aimed at young people, some aimed at people working with young people. We've got things on anxiety, panic attacks, self-harm, exams, all kinds of stuff, and we've got some more coming up soon. So yeah, check out the rest of our YouTube stream, our YouTube channel, and you can still send us questions and stuff via our social media handles. So we'd love to hear from you, and thanks for joining us.
Marvelous. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.